Well, welcome back to Natural AF. I'm your host, Isaac.
And I'm Alexa.
And this show, if you're new here, is all about reconnecting with your authentic self, finding out what it means to be natural AF, mind, body, spirit. We get into some really interesting holistic healing topics. The past couple of episodes have been around the legal structure and some really interesting discoveries and people that are on the front lines leading the fight towards more freedom and learning how to navigate the legal structures with more personal power and authority. And this episode brings us back to a time not so long ago when the world lost its ever-loving mind. And especially down here in Australia, they really had it out for you. Anyone that wanted to poke their head out and be independent and different and think for themselves, they really tried to stuff you back into the box with their boot. And Nick Patterson, our guest today, is an absolute legend. Didn't take that kindly, didn't take that sitting down. Fought to keep his business open and went out and put his body on the line for what he was thinking and believing and telling others to do, led by example, an absolute legend.
Yeah, I think our international listeners, so those over in the US and other countries, I think you're going to find this episode really interesting. Nick's got some of the best stories. Love everything that Nick's about. He's just so awesome.
Yep. And he's been with the LFM from the very beginning, helping Dave and Aaron, and he'll be speaking at the festival this year. He's just an inspirational guy. People love hearing him talk. They love his story. He's like the Australian Ian Smith. But honestly, I think Ian Smith had it kind of easy. You know, you listen to his story. I have a lot of respect for that guy, but, you know, nobody was like yanking his arm out of his socket and like throwing him in prison and all that stuff. So, too bad Fox News didn't call up old Nick on this one and bring him on and tell his story. I think a lot of people would have been fired up and would have led more people out to support and fight for the rights or just stand up for them and stand in the rights that you naturally are born with. The Living Free Festival is part of that.
Yeah. So Nick's going to be speaking there. And he is very involved with the Living Free movement. He has his own webinar series on there. So if you're not already on the Living Free movement platform, we always encourage people to join, especially if you are wanting more freedom and to discover more truth. That's what the LFM is all about. And yeah, there's so many amazing people on there like Nick that very much speak to that.
Yeah, in the community. It's all about the community and standing with other people because together we strong, divided we break. What is that? One of our founding fathers allegedly had said this, if we don't hang together, we'll all hang separately. So words to the wise.
So we're also going to be at the Living Free Festival this year. Isaac's going to be emceeing. I'm going to be presenting a workshop. And of course, we're going to have a stall for natural art form like we did last year. And we had such a ball last year. Last year's festival was incredible for the first one of its kind in Australia. It was amazing. And this year's just going to be even bigger and even better. So get your tickets. You'll get a sweet discount if you use our code NaturalAF. And you can grab those tickets at livingfreefestival.org. The link is in the show notes. And we hope to see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Last year was such a blast. Bringing natural art form to it, we had a great reception there. It's just really, you notice a difference when you're around people that are like-minded, that know the value of some of the natural remedies that we do and the effort and the links that we go to bring the best, cleanest ingredients all together into things that people buy and use every day, or would if they'd known that it existed before now. A clean, natural, topical, plant-based, anti-inflammatory thing that they can use for things like Nick's shoulder that got yanked out of socket. So it's just great being around our kind of people, which is what I think you're going to get out of it is just the community, the fun, and it's safe and fun for the family. That's our focus.
It's just incredible when you go to these events. I know that you've spoken about this with the Beartaro Fest and Music and Sky, and the people that went to Confluence recently said the same thing. It's just this vibrational frequency that is just on another level. And, you know, we always credit the first Living Free Festival to us relaunching this podcast together. It just gave us this massive boost of not only inspiration, but just this knowing that we had to do it. And we did. And it's kind of come full circle now being at this year's festival and both of us presenting. So yeah. Super exciting. Can't wait to see you there. And in the meantime, if you can't make it, of course, you can always purchase natural art form products online and you'll get 10% off using the code naturalaf10 at checkout, and that's at naturalartform.com. All of the links are in the show notes. And if you have already purchased from us, we'd love to hear your experience. Leave us a Google review, leave us a review on the website. Doesn't matter which avenue you take. We'd love to hear your feedback and how it's been helping you.
We've got those links in the show notes, and you can also go to naturalartform.com and you'll see the review widget on there. You can just click on that and you'll find your way there. So without further ado, let's get into the interview with Nick Patterson.
Nick's journey has been one of conviction and transformation, from a faith-filled upbringing and career in MMA to becoming a community leader and political advocate. After a life-altering injury and the closure of his gym during COVID-19, he stepped into activism, founding initiatives like Project Milestone and the Peacemakers, and standing firm for justice, even successfully defending himself in court after imprisonment during lockdown protests. Through every chapter of his life, Nick has embodied strength, perseverance, and purpose, and has remained steadfast in his pursuit of truth and justice. Today, Nick continues to inspire others, proving that faith, resilience, and a strong sense of purpose are the keys to creating meaningful change.
All right, Nick. So good to see you again since the festival, and welcome to Natural AF.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, mate. It's really good.
Oh, this feels like it's been such a long time coming. Dave was one of our early guests when we started doing the podcast together. And, you know, we talked about some of the child trafficking stuff that you guys did together. And ever since then, we've been saying, we've got to get Nick on the podcast. And
by that, she means investigating, not, running a...
not child trafficking, anti-child trafficking.
Anti-child trafficking, that's right. Thanks for clarifying. And then we met you. I met you for the first time at the festival. Obviously, have known you for a long time through the Living Free movement and other things, which we'll get into. So it's so good to have you on and to introduce you to our audience, because we have a lot of, most of our audience is in the States. So I'd love for you to sort of tell a bit of your story, Nick, because you kind of did get a name here in Australia over the last few years because you were, crusader for the rebels. And tell us a bit about how that came to be, how all of that sort of unfolded.
Yeah, it's interesting because I just call this divine providence. So when, obviously, we talk about being awake to the agenda or to the agendas. I think I was awake for a long time because I was at our local church. I was the crazy anti-vax guy that was trying to blow the whistle on that years ago. And of course, a lot of people thought I was mad and I was crazy. Yeah. I think even my wife for a while thought that I was a bit crazy because, people get into her ear. I think your husband's gone a bit crazy. And then she's probably thinking maybe he has gone crazy. This is pretty extreme. But anyway, I think all of that was preparation for what was to come, which was obviously the COVID lockdowns. And obviously Victoria was probably the harshest in the world. I think Canada copped it that was pretty even keel. I think Israel did too, in different ways. So when the lockdowns happened, because I'd been doing legal research with a guy named Darren Dixon, you've probably met Darren, and he's been teaching me for years. I knew that there was no provision that would allow the government to shut businesses down the way they did. So I knew that this is rubbish. This is a lie. Plus, I knew the whole agenda was a lie anyway.
Right.
Because I've been following the vaccine, like the white papers on, and all the new patents were all in vaccines. And I was following a lot of that. I wasn't reading everything, but I was following people that were. And then when the lockdowns happened, I just thought, no, I'm not shutting my business down. I'm going to invoke as much courage in the population as I can, and try to encourage everybody else to have the gumption to stand up for their businesses and their rights. I was immediately so the lockdowns happened in April 2020, the first lockdown. Or it might have been the end of March.
Yeah.
Beginning of April, I had police turn up to my gym because I was on social media being public that we're open. If your gym's closed down, come to our gym. We're open. We're not closing. And I had a lot of people turn up to my gym. It was great. Business was good. And then police turned up to my gym. And I had about 25 people in the gym on this was a Wednesday night. I had running a fighters class. I had some pros there. I had one of the international fighters there. He was a top pro as well. He was in my gym at the time.
They're the ones you really want when the police show up.
Well, this is the problem. This is the issue, though. When the police knocked on the door, I went out with a mate of mine and we had this interaction with the police, which became a viral video because it was filmed.
Yeah.
And I went back into the gym. Everybody bar one had run out the back door and climbed over the barbed wire fences and ran away.
Chicken shit.
I get that it's kind of fun. The police are here. Let's run. Let's go. Except that there's that fun element, right? It's kind of like a game.
Yeah.
But that was the time for us to stand up and just be staunch.
Yeah.
So I knew that courage was the issue. People were really scared. And that has to do with, I believe, integrity. Because integrity is obviously the structure of your core and your moral foundation. If that's strong, then it doesn't matter. You're unwavering. Mm-hmm. If it's not strong because you don't really know what you truly believe in and what your values really are, then when something like police turning up to a particular gym, when there's these lockdowns that are meant to be like extreme and the police are there, I saw the people just break. Oh, what do we do? Oh, everyone's running. Let's just run. Rather than, well, no, this is wrong, and I'm going to stand up now. So then I went on a bit of a crusade to promote the idea of courage and standing up for yourself and for your rights. So 2 days later, I had another interaction with the police at my gym. We had 22 police turn up to the gym, and a member of the DHHS Health Department, authorised health officer. And we had and it was funny because I saw one of our patrons from the gym, because the police had blocked off all the streets, all the entry and exits of this from my gym, because there's three roads that go into one place. We're right in the middle.
Yeah.
And one of my mates, one of our patrons, actually, I'm friends with their family. He got pulled over by the police, and they were really harassing him, and they were being really aggressive with him. So I ran out to help him. And when I came back to come into the gym, because we've got these great big 6.5 foot fences with barbed wire around them, the guys that were in the gym closed the gate and locked it with me on the outside.
Oh, no.
I was locked on the outside, and all these police are there. And I just thought, well, I guess I've got to have this interaction with the police on that side of the fence with the police. And they tried to arrest me, but they weren't able to, just because, and I think it was just confidence. Like, I was able to argue the point confidently enough, and I had enough legal knowledge. Not that it was everything I said was right, but enough of it was right that the police weren't really convinced that they could arrest me. So they didn't arrest me. They let me go, and that became another viral video. So that's sort of how I became known, because I was the first business owner to do this.
Yeah. Then
others started to do the same thing after. But I was hoping that people would be inspired by this, and they'd say, yeah, I'm going to keep my business open. Because if the majority of the businesses stay open, that's it. It's over. The narrative's done.
Exactly.
That people power. But, we just didn't have enough courage, I think, and enough mental fortitude to actually do that.
Yeah.
So anyway, then from there, I had police turn up to my house at 1 o'clock in the morning, midnight, night after night. This was happening. I hadn't committed any offences. It was just police turning up to check in on me.
Yeah.
Which is really odd. You think, I've never had police turn up to my house at midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning, and now 5 nights in a row you've done this.
Yeah,
and I haven't been charged with
tactic.
Yeah. It's like proper communism, like what we think about when we think of the
the SS did that. Yeah,
the Stasi. They turn up. I said the only reason you're here is because you can't intimidate me, so you're trying to intimidate my family.
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to do. So I ended up having a big argument with two of these police, and I chased one of them up the street one of the days, and he knew that he was wrong.
Just followed him to continue the conversation, or
no,
he was running away?
To give me a piece of paper, and I slapped it out of his hand, and I said, "You don't give," and because I just lost it. It was the 5th night in a row.
Yeah.
It was the fifth, and I just had enough of it. I said, you're wrong. You're turning out to my house at midnight. So it was nearly 1 o'clock in the morning this particular night. I said, there's no excuse for that. If you want to give me a notice, you give it to me during the day, but you don't turn up at my house at this time. The only reason you're doing that is and it was all being filmed.
Yeah.
And they knew that they were wrong. Like, these police officers knew they were wrong. That's why they couldn't escalate the situation, because they didn't have the confidence to.
Yeah.
Because they know that inside that they would have known, anyone would have known that we are turning up to your house at 1 o'clock in the morning to give you a notice when we could have given it to you at some other time. But obviously we've been told to give it to you at 1 o'clock in the morning to intimidate you more. So anyway, and then we had a bit of a back and forth, and then they backed off like this, and I was a bit of a push and a shove. But it was getting out of control. But the more they did this, the more I realized that what the whole thing, what was really going on. And it was, so I'm a biblical guy, so I understand it from this perspective, that there's God, which is truth, and then there's Satan, which is the lies. And I often say to people that are Christians, I'll say, what's something that God can't do that Satan can? And they, sometimes you get the answer that I want, which is, well, Satan can lie. I said, yeah. And who's the God of this world? And I said, well, Satan is. Yeah, that's right. So when you understand that this whole world is set up by the liar, the one that everything that exists, every stronghold of power, every narrative is a lie, whether it be transgenderism, whether it be fractional reserve banking, whether it be how governments work with the left and right paradigm, it doesn't matter. They're all based on a lie. And when you break down the lie and you break down the narrative, what happens is you end up becoming public enemy number one, because you're affecting their power. We saw this during the COVID situation, where obviously the whole thing was a lie. But when we had, because we had 2 rallies in the city, because I was organising a lot of the rallies with some other groups. We had 2 weeks in Melbourne's CBD, where 1 week was the lesser of the 2. The police themselves said that the conservative estimates were there was about 340,000 people there, which is massive.
Wow. Yeah.
And then the week after was bigger. A lot of people say about 500,000 people were there, because that was the really big one. Once that happens, the narrative's broken. It's done. And what happened after that was we went from X amount of police officers enforcing the whole agenda to half of the police either leaving, taking leave, being on stress leave, or just quitting their jobs. Really? So now that there's half the police working to enforce the agenda, they don't have the manpower to enforce the agenda. So the people at the top don't do anything. They just convince the people below to enforce it. If the people below choose to not do whatever it is, for whether it's moral reasons or whatever reasons, the narrative breaks. They can't push it further. That's how we were able to win that, because we did consistently. And people say, rallies don't really have any power. They do, because what happens is when there's that many people there, all of a sudden everybody in the whole state would have known someone that was at that rally, right? Because we've got 1 in 20 people out of the whole state was at the rally in the city at that one place at that one time, right? So the narrative's broken, and that includes all of the police would have known multiple people that would have been there. So the agenda's breaking down, and then there's these people that are meant to be enforcers enforcing this thing, realizing what we're doing is morally wrong, what we're doing is legally wrong, what we're doing is against the will of the people. I'm not doing it anymore. And then once the police do that, all of a sudden the people above go, well, we can't enforce this false agenda anymore. So anyway,
is that why they brought in the outsiders? Is there a validity to that, where the people that were shooting rubber bullets at folks were mercenaries?
I don't know if they were. I know that a lot of those police officers were tactical police. They have the critical incident response unit, and they've got what they call the port squad. These are like the tactical police who are not they're not used for their intellect. They're just like soldiers that just go
They're
go get that guy, you know. And they don't,
junkyard dogs. Yeah.
yeah.
And so,
yeah.
well, that was my question too. Was that because, like, worldwide, everyone heard about, you know, people getting shot at with rubber bullets? Was that after that huge rally that of 500,000 people, or was this like the following year?
That was after. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That was after, because the narrative had broken now, and they couldn't. And this shows the desperation of the people above. We don't have enough manpower anymore. We have to now use, you know, the tear gas and rubber bullets on people to stop them. So that's what they had to escalate it. And that's so you realize that's how it would have occurred in places like Romania, all the rest of it. It would have gotten to the point where they would have lost their power, or they escalate, you know, their enforcement to, you know, to even potentially killing people, which is what they did in some of these other communist countries. And that's what was happening here. But it was funny. Like, I always look at it in a positive light. Like, we had this one. I've got to share this experience. You'll like this. You'll appreciate it. So I was running these rallies. Not these rallies. I was running rallies at my gym as well. But I was running these like meetings at our gym where we were teaching all the business owners how to keep their businesses open, and how to, and we're doing like mock discussions with police. So someone would pretend to be the police officer, would give them a script, and would teach people how to, in front of everybody, because then you've got, you know, you're on the spot, people are watching, so there's that element of nervous energy, which is what you would encounter when you're dealing with people in that situation in real time. And I had this particular event organised. We'd done a number of them, but this particular one was organised for Saturday night, 7:00. And on the Wednesday, and I call this more divine providence, I had this inspiration that the police were going to turn up. Now, no one told me that, but inside I knew the police were going to turn up. So what I did is, because I was public about it, I just did it on social media, Facebook. Hey guys, our meeting's 7:00 Saturday night. We're going to be going through these things, how to keep your businesses open. So I did another follow-up post. If you haven't been cleared by our security team to come to our event, contact me first, and we'll let you know if you can come. Now, there was no security team. It was just me. So, but people would ring me and they go, hey, Nick, can I come to your event? Now, if I knew them really well, I would say, yes, you can, but it's going to be on a Zoom. Don't tell anybody. But if I didn't know, I wasn't sure, even if I thought they were all right, if I didn't know 100%, I'd say, look, not this one, maybe next one. So anyway, we're on the Zoom call, and I've got cameras at my gym that I can live stream.
Oh,
so
cool.
I'm live streaming these cameras from my gym, but I'm at home on a Zoom call. 18 police cars turn up to my gym.
Wow.
The Channel 7 news turns up, and this great big police van as well.
And you got it all on video?
There. Yeah. And we're not even there. It's brilliant. So what I would do is, they were there before 7. So when it was like 6:45, I would do another post saying, hey guys, we're going to start our meeting now at 8:00. Obviously our meeting's already going. Yeah. And then when it would get to 7:45, hey guys, we're going to start our meeting at 9:00. And I kept doing this all night. So these police stayed there all night.
Oh, that's brilliant.
It was so much fun.
Oh, that's hilarious.
I love it.
And I think that's part of why they targeted me the way they did. Because
for sure.
I wasn't scared of them.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any respect for them. And I think, and this is how I think about it, if they want us to respect the law, they should make the law respectable. If they want us to respect the police should conduct themselves respectfully, and then we'll respect
100%.
them.
Yeah, 100%.
So then we had lots of interactions with the police, different ones, but then we had this was a year later, after the first interactions with them at my gym that I talked about at the beginning. I was at another rally. And the rally was cancelled, but we were going to go anyway, just because we knew people were going to go to this rally, even though it had been cancelled, because the organisers of the rally believed that the police were going to become really violent, so they cancelled it. So we went anyway, and as we get to the Flagstaff Gardens, which is the gardens area where the rally was meant to be organised, there were police everywhere. It was crazy. it's like every police officer from the whole state was in this one spot. It was like, that's the most important thing. All the other crimes going on don't matter. We just have to stop people standing up for their rights.
Yeah.
Because the government's, established this narrative. It was crazy because the crime rate was really high during that period, and there was a lot of issues that could have been dealt with by the police that weren't being dealt with because they were dealing with us for doing nothing. Anyway. So I had this interaction with this one police officer. He walks across the road and he goes, "Oh, g'day, mate. What's your name?" I said, "Oh, I don't talk to police." And he says, "Well, you will talk to me." And I said, "Oh, yeah, why is that?" He said, "Because I believe you're outside of your 5Ks." I said, "Oh, yeah, where do you get your belief from?" And he goes, "Well, you're gonna confirm that you're not." And I said, "Oh, I'm not guilty until proven innocent." So we had these discussions, and I mentioned a case that they all learned in the academy, which is DPP versus Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to talk to police unless I'm under arrest, and you can't arrest me unless you have reasonable grounds to arrest me, which means you've got to have some factual evidence. And I quoted the High Court case George versus Rocket, which says when a statute prescribes that there must be reasonable grounds for a state of mind, including suspicion and belief, it requires the existence of facts which are sufficient to induce that state of mind in a reasonable person. I said, "Where's the facts that you're relying upon to establish your belief that I'm committing the offence?" And he didn't have any.
Yeah.
So that's why I knew you've got nothing. So I'm standing there, and then we ended up being surrounded by about 100 police in the end. And that's the coolest part about it. Like that we've got this footage and these photos from people that were in our group as I'm talking to this police officer, and there's like 100 police, and that's all for intimidation, but it doesn't work because I know that I'm right. And my mother, she'd always say this. My mother should say, "Don't argue with my son because if he believes he's right, you won't win." And that's just my nature. I know what my nature is. So we had.
You wouldn't happen to be a Taurus, would you, Nick?
Oh, no, I'm not. But yeah. So anyway, so it was interesting. So in the end, this police officer who was really arrogant, we even got pushy. Like he grabbed my hands, I pushed his hands away. I said, "No, you can't just grab me." And then he's like, "Yeah, but you're commit. I believe you're outside your 5Ks." And I said, "No, you're assuming I am, but you don't know who I am, and you don't know if I'm outside of 5Ks. You don't have any facts. You want me to give you the facts so that you can arrest me. I'm not going to do that. I don't have to." And in the end, he went from being really arrogant to bowing his head and saying, "Well, will you give me something?" I said,
"Oh my God,
no way.
I don't like you. I don't trust you. I think what you're doing is a vile action against the people." Anyway, then this inspector, the top dog of the whole scenario, he comes in and he says, "Look, we're going to give you 5-10 minutes to leave the area, or else you'll be arrested." So we left.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. So we left. But as we were leaving, we had the tactical police, the critical incident response police, and we had the port squad block us. They were pushing us. They would be trying to get to our cars. They'd block the footpath. So then we're going to the road, and then they'd start pushing us and yelling at us for being on the road. So they were agitating us for the sole purposes of getting a reaction so they could escalate the situation, which police are meant to de-escalate, and they were escalating it. So you could see it's as clear as day. The police are doing the complete opposite of what they're meant to do, which would scare some people. But our group of people that were, many of them were fighters because I was a pro fighter and I ran fight gyms. We weren't really scared of it, and we're looking at it going, "Well, we can see what you're doing is wrong. So you're just giving us more, more confidence that what we're doing is right." Because most of our guys are all Christians too, and we understand that when you're doing what's true in this upside down world, you're going to be persecuted for it. The more you persecute us, the more we know we're on the right path.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
how. So it was really empowering in that way. But in the end, because we didn't react, none of our guys reacted. Most people, I think, if they weren't trained the way our guys were, would have reacted and would have pushed back, and then it would have escalated. Then someone would have got pepper sprayed, then arrested. They would have been falsely charged.
Yeah, and then they'll get their narrative and their little video bites that they want. Yeah.
But what happened was, because we didn't react, they tried again. We still didn't react. So the third time, there was 42 police officers that ran across the road. and they ended up just bashing up my mate. They're just throwing punches at him, and that's all
And-
caught on camera.
Yeah, I was going to say that was the video I think that I saw, because I didn't know of you before then. And that was the video that went like really viral, right?
Yeah, actually, the other ones at the gym were the ones that went really, really viral. That went viral as well. But those other ones went really viral, I think, like on the social media side.
Yeah.
But the other stuff went viral because it was in the front page of the Herald Sun. I think it was Herald Sun, or it was The Age, where it shows me punching a police officer in the face.
Yeah.
You know, so that went viral in that way. Yeah.
Well, because they didn't show them the police bashing your mate first.
No, they didn't.
Of course not.
Yeah.
So I was charged. So the police ended up breaking my shoulder. They ripped it out of its socket.
Oh,
They jumped on top of me. They got the batons out. It was really bad. And there was 42 of them, and there was 6 of us involved.
Wow.
And we got capsicum sprayed and beat up pretty badly. And we were all charged with a multitude of offences. I was charged with affray, which is up to 7 years in prison, assault police, multiple assault. There's 23 charges, assault police, resist arrest. In the end, though, all the charges were dropped, and the judge had to concede that the police committed the unjustified violence, and that they lied on their statements, and that they falsified evidence, and that all the evidence had to be deemed inadmissible, and that they abused the court process. And it's interesting because even now, the police will not concede that they should be liable to pay my legal costs. It's cost me $350,000 to defend myself on this one. So I was, just so you know, I was prosecuted 4 times, 4 separate prosecutions. I represented myself on 3 of them, and I won them. But there was but this big one, because of the implications of it, I thought it would be good to have representation. We had some good lawyers that were completely against the jabs, and they were good guys. So I thought we will use this one as the case to set the precedent against this kind of policing. And we've done pretty well so far. But you think about the judge has said the police committed unjustified violence, that they committed the offences, that they falsified evidence, they abused the court process. Yet the police are saying, well, we don't have to pay your legal costs though. We're not liable for that. We haven't done anything wrong.
Oh, are you kidding?
They are still saying they've done nothing wrong.
Yeah.
I think we have a backward system. I think our legal system is completely backward. It's in the dark ages, and the reason I say that is, how can there be a ruling from a judge in the not the Supreme Court, the county court, which is not the magistrates, it's the higher court, but it's not the high court. Yeah. And the judge has said that the police commit unjustified violence, but none of the police are have charges laid against them for those offences. We've even had a member of parliament call upon the Attorney General to lay formal charges against those police. Nothing's happened to them. They're a protected class. Wow. So it's what it's done is it's unraveled. This whole situation has unraveled the corruption of the police and the government and how they work together, because police are meant to be independent office holders. They're not meant to be directed by the government, but they are. Obviously, we know they are. So that's one positive. We have the evidence and the proof, and we can show that this is what's really happening. This is what our police really are. Yeah. And this is why it's good to share this information on these platforms, so other people can hear about it and they can see it and be I guess educated with that information.
Yeah, totally.
Well, I admire that it took them 3 times to basically, run at you guys and assault you, try to get a response before you actually went out and responded. But because in the States, I'm just man, we haven't had anything quite like that. The only thing that I can compare it to would be when the communist agitators, was a Black Bloc. I can't remember what the public name for it was, but the people that would go and stir up fights and they'd throw bricks. It's part of the Black Lives Matter. Antifa. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We get them over here as well.
Yeah. So we have police elements that were pushing the Antifa towards the people that they wanted to fight. and they wanted to stir up a battle so that you get, so they're playing these semi high level games, but I'll just point
propaganda.
out, yeah,
It's propaganda, 100%. Yeah, I mean, they even put me in jail for a month for that.
Yeah,
for the offences that they committed against me. Like, they broke my shoulder, they bashed my mate, we ended up having an interaction, they falsified evidence, all the rest of it, put me in jail. Yet they would still say that we've done nothing wrong, though. We haven't done anything wrong. We're just doing our job, right? So it's just crazy. Like, you can't get anything. So we've got this thing called the model litigant rules in Australia, right? So think about this. It's the Commonwealth, and all the states have a version of this where all big companies and government officers have to follow these rules to be model litigants. And they've got to be fair and equitable and just. They're really important rules, except there's no penalty if they fail to do so. It'd be like, we've got road rules. Everyone has to follow the road rules. Otherwise, there might be deaths on the road and people get hurt. Okay. But if I don't follow the road rules, what happens? Well, I get a penalty, don't I? There's no penalty. So you've got these rules that exist, but there's no penalty to it. So what's the point?
Yeah.
It's the same. We've got this thing called IBAC. So IBAC's the Anti-Corruption Commission, right? So they and this is, it's just amazing to me. I sent a complaint in to IBAC about the police, what the police had done. And they said, look, we're under-resourced. We don't believe this is a public interest of any public interest. I said, well, there's loads of public interest in this. And they said, no, we've deemed it's not public interest. Anyway, after the ruling, I sent in another complaint, and I said, you need to investigate this, the corruption, because and it is public. Last time you said it wasn't public interest. Well, here's the proof it is. It's been on Channel 7 news. It's been in the newspapers, front page. It's definitely public interest, which is what I told you originally. Anyway, a year later, they get back to me and they say, we still haven't had time to process your complaint. A year later, right? Yeah. It's just, what if I was still in jail? I could still be in jail for something I haven't done. And what it is, I just call it a cartel, right? The way governments operate, they're a cartel. Like in Australia, where you've got the government, you've got your state governments and your federal government. So your state government appoints the judges. So there's a conflict of interest there, isn't there? When the government is appointing the people who adjudicate. Then you've got the police commissioner. And the deputy commissioner and the police command is also appointed by the same government. So they appoint the police hierarchy, they appoint the judges, and then you've got IBAC, the Anti-Corruption Commission. Well, they're funded by the government. So the government can just cut the funding, or they just won't get any money if they don't fall in line. So I think it's just a big cartel that we're dealing with. So the only solution that I think we have is people power. And obviously, as a biblical man, I think the only way for us to maintain and build that people power is on firm moral principles and principled people who have integrity. And that's we're a long way from that, I think. But I think we're getting there. I think these tough times we're going through are building our resilience and our mental toughness and fortitude.
Yeah, definitely. And I just want to say, I've just pulled this up because I just made a post on this, I think last week. Because they had what's his name, Senator Ron Johnson, did an interview on who's Hoodie and John. What's their show called? The Club Grubbery.
Heroes.
Club Grubbery.
Club Grubbery, yeah.
And he was talking about the vaccine cartel, and you're using that same word. And it's so interesting because I actually looked up the definition of cartel. One, it is an international syndicate, combine, or trust formed especially to regulate prices and output in some field of business. So that relates to the vaccine industry or the whole pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah.
A coalition of political or special interest groups having a common cause as to encourage the passage of a certain law. That's the two definitions of cartel, and that's exactly what they do.
That's exactly what they are. You know where I spoke at an event in Perth a few years ago, and It was an event we organized called, it was a Christians Unite event. It was with our Peacemaker group because we were in 3 states, and it was the guys that organized it. And we had this guy, his name's Augusto Zimmerman. So he's a constitutional professor, he's a brilliant man.
Yeah, I've heard of him before. Yeah.
Yeah, he's pretty well known. He was, I think there was a law reform commissioner in WA as well. But anyway, he's a really good guy, fully awake as well. And he explained in detail how the government's a cartel. And he explained it in detail. And that once he did that, it just invoked that idea in my head. And I started to see it. I'm looking at it going, yeah, that's a cartel. This part's of a cartel. The police are a cartel. IBAC's a cartel. I went, oh, yeah, this is a cartel. We're dealing with a cartel.
Yeah. And I think there's a reason that they, like what we're fed in movies and stuff, like there's that connotation towards cartels, like, oh, they're just drug cartels, like they're just criminals. Well, it's literally the foundation of our governmental systems. It's wild.
When you go up the hierarchy of the criminal cartel hierarchy, you end up in the government.
Exactly.
Yeah. I remember my wife was reading a book a while ago. It was all about pirates in Europe. And most of these pirates that did really well for themselves, they ended up getting a job with the whatever king or queen at the time. You're doing good business here. Well, we're happy to give you a position here if you'll manage our affairs in this area. We'll give you, the spoils of war over there. And that was what was happening like all the way back then, Hey, they're good criminals and they're doing really well. We want a piece of it rather than go to war with you. Let's work together. Yeah. And that's what's happening now. Yeah. It's just they're better at it now. They've had years of learning.
Exactly.
I wonder what the difference is between the individual culture in Australia versus the US. And it could be the numbers, because you can't do that on the scale in the States because there's way too many people. But you saw that here. They were running out of numbers to suppress the population or to push their agenda. But I'm just wondering, because we have this tradition of like rugged individualism. It's not everybody embodies it, but it's kind of been, in a lot of our American fiction and lore and all that stuff.
It's in your history. It's in your history. You've got these amendments, for the right to bear arms, freedom of speech. You've got this stuff here, and it's very clear.
Because our police are a little different.
But it's not just that. I'll tell you what it is. I reckon it comes down to this. So you've heard of the Roman circus, bread and circuses, right? You keep the people well fed, right, and which means comfortable and entertained. Nowhere are people more well fed and more entertained than probably somewhere like, because I think it's a bit harder in the US than it is in Australia. I think we've got more social welfare, I think we have more of that. I think we have more comforts here. And I think Canada probably does too. Obviously, there's healthcare issues and stuff in the US where you've got to have a job to have, whereas here you don't, right? I think we're just too comfortable and it's too easy. I don't think it is easy actually anymore. I think it's very quickly becoming very hard to live in Australia, just with all the new taxes they're bringing in. But that's happening very fast. I think that's a good thing because we need to get out of that comfort zone, because the comfort zone is what invokes the apathy. What do you do? Because people like that comfort, but you will never fulfill your purpose and become maximized in your ability and your potential if everything's easy. We need to have tough times, and we need to be put in tough situations. And, and you could use the analogy of training at the gym. Like I was a fighter. I trained in the gym, and I used to train really hard. No one becomes a top fighter or a top athlete without training hard. They've got to do the hard work. I think we've had it way too easy, and we've been so distracted with things that have no real value, just mindless scrolling on devices and just mainstream media propaganda and rubbish. And none of that invokes that human spirit of purpose. What is
and I think they pay the police too much here too. It's like in the States, like I can't believe how many BMWs I've seen for the highway patrol or whatever you call them here. I'm like, and traffic cameras and all these systems. I'm like, y'all are getting taxed way too much. They're putting too much of that money into the police force because it's just an abundance of stuff for them to play around with and buy new gadgets. Like you don't have the money for that in the States. They want to defund the police, which I don't agree with in the States at all. But we have a different culture. Like I've got a rapport with the sheriff back in the States. I respect them. I've been arrested by them a couple times, and they're great. But they're respectful. They're not, because they're elected. The sheriff is elected, and then he picks his deputies. And if his deputies are screwing off and oppressing people, the sheriff's out of there. So there's this accountability there. But yeah, the police in the States are just different. I think a lot of it too is part of our gun culture, part of the culture of the military. And yes, we do have a problem with like the over militarization of the police, but the culture is there's a strong culture of the sheepdog mentality where they're there to protect and defend. They don't have this mentality where they're like, I'm going to go and bash some civilians today because they're below me. It's like the opposite.
What part of the US are you from?
So originally from Wyoming, but I've lived in Texas and North Carolina and been all over. But
well, that's what I was going to say. It really does depend on where in the States. It can be so different because I find, and having been there, like, especially I would say like LA is like, and like sort of California around LA is like the most similar to Australia. And that's why it's funny because a lot of Aussies go and live there and they are the ones that have the highest taxes. Like California as a state has the highest taxes. They have the most controlled gun laws and they actually have the most crime. Like they tend to find throughout the states that the states with tightest gun control laws have higher crime than the states that have like open carry and
It just makes perfect sense. It makes logical sense, though. If everyone's got walking around with a gun, you're much less likely to go out and commit a crime in that area.
Exactly.
You have a whole lot of gun-toting individuals that just happy to shoot a bad guy, right? Like I spent some time in New York, and I fought in Boston. I remember that. They're got very strict gun. They're a bit more like Australia in that way too. Very, very liberal and left leaning. But then when you go to somewhere like Arizona, we spent time in Arizona, and I was in northern Idaho for a while too, and you're just walking around with carrying a gun.
Yeah,
and
I love it.
Totally different culture. You go, this is not the same as New York City. It's totally different.
Yeah.
In the rural areas, that's where I spend most of my time. The city's a bit different, but even Dallas, and I've gone through, cities and places that have restrictions, not abiding by the restrictions. I won't say anything specifically because you're never going to get me. But I just because I'm responsible, I'm trained, both as a kid growing up, shooting a BB gun. You can't even buy BB guns here if you're you buy them for your kids in the States. Here, it's like you can't even get a slingshot. But it just shows
that if you have one here. Well, it shows that the opposing nature of the control system versus the people, this like inherent distrust of the population, who I don't see showing the signs that warrants the distrust. In the States, it's like, well, we have to trust you because if not, you'll just kill all of us because there's too many of you. Like it's not that, but it's not that in their mind. But I'm just like, you treat each other with mutual respect and you get a better outcome. If you don't respect the population, eventually, not hopefully anytime soon, but eventually you're going to have an American, 1776. Well, I often have this argument with the ultra indoctrinated people in my country where they believe that guns are bad. And I'll say, all right, so has gun crime increased in Australia since they brought in those harsh restrictions on the guns? And they don't know. And I go, no, it's increased a lot. There's more guns now than there were before as well. And but they're illegal guns.
I love those statistics. I don't want the crime, but I'm like, fuck yeah.
And what I'll say to them, you do realize that the only people that don't have the guns are the people that are not the criminals. All the criminals still have the guns. They all have them.
And
so you're not being protected by these laws. You're actually now completely reliant on the police for your protection because the bad guys all have guns and you don't.
Yeah. How big are the numbers are we talking? Like, is it a massive increase? Because they started banning them back in the 80s or 90s or something?
The early 90s?
91, I think it was. Yeah, it was.
So in a relatively short amount of time.
No, I think it was 1996 or 1995. It was around then anyway. Yeah.
It was something. Yeah, that was the Port Arthur where they,
I wish I had a Jamie like Joe Rogan. I could be like, Jamie, pull that up. What are the numbers we're talking here?
Yeah. So, and then I'll also say that I remember having this discussion with my mother as well. I said, you do realize that if the whole population is armed, there's no country that can really invade you either. Because the whole population, how are they going to invade your country? Even if the Chinese, with their massive population, were going to invade, how are they going to invade? Like, everyone has a gun. We have the hometown advantage. It's just too hard. We become, 20 times more powerful. But you think that we're safer by relying on the government, who doesn't care about us. It's stealing all of our wealth and all of our commonwealth. They're giving it away. They're using the money that they do obtain to enslave us and take away our rights and freedoms. And then they're bringing huge amounts of people from overseas into a country where we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the housing, and then we've already got a housing crisis and a cost of living crisis, and then we're going to double that by doubling the population in a short period. Like, none of this adds up. Think about it. Think about the big picture.
Yeah,
I agree. And what I would say to like the American audience, anyone that's on the camp of defund the police, if you defund the police in the States, what they're pushing for, and this is allegedly, but you can read the signs, what they're pushing for is a more privatized police. And if you defund the state-run law-abiding police, then you're going to get more Australian police. That's what my concern would be, is it's going to be more, they're going to get paid more by the private side, which means they're more likely to be bribed and put in positions where they're going to
and also when you're
the criminal element.
Well, when you're privatizing, or like, because I still don't know if this is true, but they were saying that, they were bringing in international police here into Australia during COVID, like to the rallies and stuff. And they're saying that's more dangerous because they don't have to abide by our laws. Yeah. So there's a whole host of problems that come with that.
Yeah,
they are bringing international police over now. There's legislation for it. So I know in Queensland, they've got legislation
it's a UN
for.
Thing, right?
They've been bringing in police from the UK. Right now, I don't have a huge issue with that because the UK system basically the same. Yeah. The case law is the same. A lot of the case law is the same precedents, very similar. But then but the next step is to bring them over from countries that have completely different systems and different rules, and then you bring people with different values. I think the agenda is to destroy our culture altogether. We have a Christian culture, we have Christian history, whether or not you're a Christian or not, but the principles and the values are there. And there's a reason why those countries that had those principles and values prospered so well. It's because of those values. It truly provides freedom. They want to get rid of that.
I don't know if you read C.S. Lewis much, but there is this space trilogy. Hardly anybody's read it. He wrote, the last book is brilliant because it speaks exactly. It was, I don't know, what was it, like when was C.S. Lewis around? Was it 50s or earlier? It was like World War II.
Oh, I don't know, actually, but I just know I just know the books, is that The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? And
he wrote those, and he wrote these other ones. It's like a space trilogy. And the last one is called That Hideous Strength. I highly recommend people go out and read that. You read the whole series so it makes sense. But the last book, very interesting. It was like a private police force in a small town, but it was a university. Anyways, just people that aren't locals, aren't like you, don't have your culture. They're paid by a corporation to be there. And the whole thing was about manipulating people. But what was interesting too was who was actually in charge of this corrupt force. And they worked through the universities, and it was all about talking about brainwashing and using the media to manipulate people, and how easier it was to manipulate the smarter people because you put it in a journal.
How accurately that?
Yeah,
exactly.
right.
This guy was seeing it ahead of his time for sure. But it was probably because he was seeing it happening all the way back then.
Academia is the maybe not the head of the snake, but it's close to the head of the snake. Academia,
for sure.
Yeah.
We had someone on recently who spoke about that. I can't remember who it was now, but they were saying it's like, I'm not worried about like, you know, Joe Blow down the street that's, you know, working class man. Like they're the ones you want to trust. They're the ones that are questioning things.
Yeah.
It's the ones that think they're so smart and they're, you know, with their university education and their master's degrees. And they're the ones that, and I've experienced that with like extended family who have literally said like during the COVID stuff, you know, be careful what you say on my page. This is on social media. Be careful what you say on my page. It's full of lawyers and scientists and whatever. And they're the most brainwashed. And they just have this inflated sense of self and ego because they think they know it all, but they are 100% the most indoctrinated.
Yep. Yeah. They truly believe that. I don't think they truly believe, but they go along with the crowd. The crowd tells them they're an expert. I'm an expert.
Yeah.
This is what an expert is, and I tick a lot of these boxes. So don't tell me.
Yeah.
There's no humility in that either, and humility is one of those values that we're losing. You know, integrity is another one. Integrity is probably the biggest one. I like the analogy. We created a video recently about integrity and we use the analogy of integrity. Moral integrity, we liken it to the integrity of a structure or a building, right? So if the integrity is good, you know, the external forces, which would be like wind and storms and floods and earthquakes, can't topple the building over. Now, you liken that to moral integrity, which is the moral structure and the spiritual structure of who you are. It doesn't matter how much the external forces of peer pressure, fear, bribery, vanity, pride, all of those external things, they won't topple your your identity and your structure. And it goes back to a really good Bible verse that you would have heard. The wise man builds his house upon the rock. Yeah. And when the storms come, the floods come. The house, you know, maintains it. You know, it still stands. But the foolish man builds his house upon the sand, which is obviously the sand's always changing and moving, and it's not firm. Yeah. Right. When you're built on true justice, fairness, honesty, truth, these things that are rigid, right? They're just that is. And we know this because we're born with a conscience, and a conscience resonates with those ideas. But then the world says, hey, but you know what? If you concede some of that truth, and you go along with this lie, which is what happens when people go along with something they know is untrue, and they say it's my job, they're conceding the truth, and they're conceding their honesty, and then they might be conceding justice and all these other things. But that's because of an external force, which is money, their job, their security, these things on the outside, not these things on the inside. The things on the inside of justice, truth, and all the rest of it, these are the most important things. But they've done a really good job of disconnecting these younger generations from, over the last couple of generations, separating them from those moral principles and values. I did an event the other night at a gym, at a boxing gym, where I was teaching them. I was doing it's called the Christian Warrior Project. And I was talking to these fighters about the difference between a spiritual thing and a physical thing. And I asked the question, and it's interesting because they've all got these different ideas. And I said, I used this example. I said, can I give you a pizza? Like, yep. Okay. Can I give you some money? Yeah. Can I give you some gold? Yep. Can I give you some courage? And they're like, no. So is courage real then? What does courage look like? What color is it? How much does it weigh? I said, you can't weigh it. You can't measure it. It's a spiritual thing. But is it valuable? And then we talked about the value of these things. So, you don't learn about any of this stuff in school anymore. I remember I learned mostly about God and these principles in school. They've removed this from school all across the board now. In Victorian schools, we don't learn these things at all. So they're learning about having a good job, just the new values and new principles. They've got the new virtues, which are all your LGBT stuff, and all the stuff that's the new agenda, and they're replacing the old with the new. And we can see the effects of this where people are confused, they don't know who they are. And when they don't know who they are, they're much more easy to manipulate because they don't have a foundation that's solid for them to stand on, to go, no, I know where I am and you can't move me from there. They're on that sandy foundation. So this is being done to the children, but I think we, out of this necessity or need for comfort in our society, put our children into these schools and institutions. Like we homeschool our children, we always have, but a lot of parents just go, look, I can't homeschool, it's too hard. So they put them into these institutions where they remove them from those solid foundations that mum and dad would firmly build them upon, and they're not built on those foundations, and they're indoctrinated. I know they're indoctrinated. I know people go, that's a bit harsh. Well, it's not harsh. It's true. You might find it harsh, but it is true. They're being told and taught all the new values, all the new virtues. There's too many people on the earth, and climate change, and you've got to care for grandma, so get your vaccine. And so this is the new values and new morals, but integrity and honesty and doing and understanding what your conscience is and what true morals and true virtues are. That doesn't matter. And if someone does something that's unvirtuous, don't judge. Let them. It's up to them.
Anything goes.
No, we should be able to judge that and go, well, hang on, that's not right. You've done the wrong thing there. Right? I think that's the only good thing that you actually get in school is that if you've got kids there that will pull you in line. I think, especially if you're one of those kids that, like, I think this is a bit harsh, but I think the best thing about school that still exists is kids get bullied a bit, which makes them tougher. It teaches them resilience, right? Because that's good. That's good. I mean, you don't want it to go too far, but it's important for the kids to be able to deal with that, right? We can't put cotton wool around them to protect them, because then when they go in the real world, they're going to get a lot more of that. It's good that they're prepared for that. I got bullied. How do I deal with it? Well, maybe you need to go and confront that kid. Yeah, he's bigger than me and he's pushed me around. Maybe punch him in the face or whatever it is. I don't know.
Exactly.
Well, it's funny you say. It's funny you say that, Nick, but that's what I think the problem is these days with kids getting bullied, is that they don't have parents like you that are like, you need to actually confront that kid. It all gets dealt with the teachers, and they make the kids sit down, and it's like the system is so what's the right word? Dysfunctional. I don't want to say broken, because the system's, it's not broken. It's designed to do exactly what it does.
It's doing what it's meant to do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it's so dysfunctional that it doesn't even teach kids that. So when they are getting bullied at school, I don't think these days it is even teaching them that, because the way that it's dealt with isn't done in the way that it should be dealt with, where kids are learning those skills of actually being assertive and saying, I didn't like that you did that to me. And I think what happens too now in this day and age, which again, I think we talked about recently on another episode, is that the bullying, I think another problem with it is that kids aren't escaping it, because once they leave school, because they're all online now and they've all got social media and stuff like that, there's no escaping it. So it just adds this other level to it. But I'm totally with you on like the morals and the foundation that we're building society on. And another thing that came to me as you were saying that is like, it's not just comfort, it's the value of safety and security. I heard this once and I didn't quite get it, and now I fully get it. And I think because I've embodied it, safety and security actually don't exist. They're actually not tangible things. Safety is a feeling. Like, you can be in the most dangerous of situations, but if you're secure in yourself, again, security, safety, they're feelings. They're only things that I believe you can provide to yourself. You can't get them externally. That's a lie. Like, that's another thing, like what you're saying. These are the lies that people are fed. But that's what we're told that all of these things are for. You've got to get your vaccine to be safe. It's for your safety. All of the rules and the fines that you get and it's for everyone's safety. And it's like, it actually doesn't exist.
The only safety that does actually exist is on the rifle. This is my safety.
All you're safe from... the only thing you're safe from by going along with these agendas is from the ridicule from the masses who believe in the agenda. But you're not following your conscience, which means you're not following your purpose. Like it says in the Bible, it says, it's the light that lights every man that comes in the world. That's your conscience. We've got this thing inside of us that when, and I'll give you an example, like somebody does something that's courageous, and somebody sees it, and this goes back to that Bible verse, let your lights shine before men, because when someone sees it's courage, or they see justice, or they see mercy, or they see goodness, or they see love in real time, and it's acting out in front of them, and it's real, what does it do? It inspires, which means put the spirit in spirit, and they see it, and it changes them from within.
Yeah.
What's happening though, people are not doing these things because they're worried because of fear. Now, fear doesn't come from God. It's a destructive force. It goes to war with your faith. And then it brings its friend doubt into the temple, and that goes to war with your confidence. And when you have no faith and no confidence, you've got no power. So people go, well, you know what? I'll concede these things because I don't want to be called names. I don't want to be ridiculed. I don't want to be persecuted because of a comfort. I want that comfort. It's just easier. I don't want to have to fight that. But if you don't fight and defend yourself and defend your principles, then they don't have any value. The things that have most value are the things you'll fight for the most. So it's all to do with values. Like, I love my children. I love them so much. They're so valuable to me. I'll do anything for them. I'll give my own life for them. Same with my wife. I'll give my own life for them. But I wouldn't do that for my dog, right? I love my dog, but I don't love my dog that much that I'll give my life for my dog, right? So that's where my values are. But we're being given these new values where the most important thing is that you don't offend people and make them feel bad, because their feelings are more important than the truth. And that's a lie. We need to be able to have the confidence to I think that's breaking down pretty quickly now. I think we're definitely seeing a lot of Christian and conservative sort of culture coming back. I think when we were talking about the police before, you were talking about the police in the US and like the sheriff compared to like the Australian police. Our police here, I just wanted to, because I didn't say this earlier, our police protect the crown and the crown's interests, not the people's interests, and that's the difference too. And they're paid well for that. But going back to the other subject, which is the comfort that people have and they're at ease in their life. That provides no value. It doesn't make you strong. It makes you weak. And I don't want to be a weak man. And I don't want to be an uninspired man. I don't want to give my inspiration up for comfort, because there's nothing of value in comfort. Because when I die, what am I taking with me? Nothing. There's nothing to take with me, because the house and all the nice stuff that I have, it stays here with me. So the things that matter most are the things that are inside of you, the spiritual part of you. And we need to realize that. But they're teaching all of our children that everything came from nothing and it all exploded into nothing. And there's no such thing as a spiritual thing, even though we all know that there is spiritual things, because we're conscious that there's things inside of us that motivate us that we can't prove tangibly exist, but that somehow we know that these things are more valuable and more important than all the external things. It's like, I'll share a little story with you. A friend of mine is full atheist, and he's a physiotherapist, and he sponsored me when I was fighting. And during the COVID period, so he was still sponsoring me as I got free physio and everything there, because we were just really good friends. But he said to me, because I snapped my bicep tendon, right? So if you snap your bicep tendon, you need surgery, right? And this happened because I was getting told from above, close your gym, it's time to do something else. But I didn't. I had this thought in my head, no, you know what? I'm gonna build my gym up. I'm gonna build it up big. I'm gonna open up another gym. And in that thought, I put on my boxing gloves while I was running a class, and I did some sparring with one of my amateur fighters. I threw one punch and I snapped my bicep tendon. And I straight away looked up and I went, okay, I'm going the wrong way here. Went to the physio. He said, that's not going to heal. It can't heal. Bicep tendon snaps. That's it. I went, I don't believe you. So what I did is I went home. I started praying and I started straightening my arm and just believing it would heal. I'd go to bed believing it would heal while I'm sleeping. And I just really focused that way. 5 weeks later, I went back to the physio and I could do chin-ups again. And he said, that's impossible. And he's done all the tests on my arm. He said, there's no way that can happen. And he said, you're making me believe that there's a God. I said to him, why don't you believe that there's a God? He said, I don't see any evidence for it. So then I said to him, why did you choose not to get the vaccine? Now, I knew that it wasn't because he thought the vaccine was dangerous, because he never believed any of that until later. He goes, well, I just knew it was wrong. I said, oh, you just knew, did you? I said, all right. So you know that inner knowing that you had? He said, yeah. Can you please provide me some evidence for that? And he goes, what do you mean? I said, well, show me the evidence of that inner knowing that you had, because you were willing to give up your job, your ability to travel. You love to travel. You're one of the best paid physios in the southeast of Victoria. So you were going to give that up. You're going to give up your status and standing in the community that you work in for this inner knowing that you had. I want you to show me the evidence of that, because these are objective things you're willing to give up for something that I don't believe is objective. And that changed him. That affected him in here. And he's like, you're right. So that's your spirit. That's the proof that you've got a spirit. But I think we just come into this world, it's just like an assumption. It just is. But we don't think about it. Once you start to think about it, you go, yeah, there's all this stuff inside of us that we can't actually prove. So it must be spiritual. We can't weigh it. We can't measure it. And it drives us. And it's so important and so valuable. And that's the evidence of that spiritual world that we live in. And we need to go back to that, because that's where the real value is.
100%. I love that story.
A lot of good points there.
Yeah, I love that story. That's such a beautiful story, because, and just the way you put it so simply, because it's sometimes really hard to, talk about these things, the intangible, and explain it really simply, but just the way you put it to him, I love that.
Yeah, and I didn't know I was going to say that. It just came up that way, and it came out that way, and it ended up. And it's interesting because he's changed a lot of his life too. He's left Victoria and he's living up, in this beautiful part of New South Wales, and he's doing really well. And I caught up with him the other week, actually. He was in Melbourne, and we just caught up and we spoke for like 2 hours, just hung out. But you can see there's a change that's happened to him through the whole experience. The whole COVID situation has been a big part of it, but it's opened up the avenue to plant those seeds in his mind that there's more than just the physical. And that's what really matters. This is where the real value is.
If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you have a curious mind, an open heart, and are a seeker of freedom and truth. And there is nothing more freeing than seeking and finding the truth of who you are. And this is where I'd love to support you. I'm a self-alignment coach that helps you to align with who you were divinely born to be, not who you were conditioned to be. The aim of my work is to guide you to live a more purposeful and fulfilling life that is totally authentic to you. One of the modalities I work with is Psych K, where I facilitate you in transforming your limiting beliefs and perceptions into empowering beliefs that align with your goals and where you want to be in life, not where you've already been, which is often lost, stuck, or unfulfilled. I also work with Human Design, which offers an energetic blueprint of who you are and how you were designed to operate in the world. I offer readings for both individuals and couples, as it is not only an amazing tool for self-discovery and alignment, but also for understanding different relationship dynamics. So if you're ready to overcome blocks and programming that doesn't serve you anymore, unlock your potential, and harness your innate gifts, then I'd love to work with you. Get started today and book in an obligation-free 30-minute discovery call with me via the link in the show notes, and I'd love to connect and see how I can support you. Do something today that your future self will thank you for.
That's what really, really surprised me during COVID, because I grew up Christian, and in the months leading up to COVID, I had stopped going to church. And part of that was just not really, like, noticing that I'm not really growing there, that I'm hearing the same stories over and over again.
Yeah.
People, I don't know, just, it was very effeminate kind of. There was men leading it, but it was like the softer men, and everyone's supposed to be gentle and nice and all this other stuff. And then it just confirmed to me during COVID. I was like, none of these guys have a backbone. There's not one backbone among all these guys, all these pastors that I grew up with. One of them, literally a mentor, pastor, a friend of mine, literally came out as gay during all that, or just before all that. And his wife left him and all this stuff, never mentioned why. And then now it makes sense. But I'm just like, there's like a spiritual corruption going forth in the church. And this 2020 was when the vision became clear. And that was something that was apparent right from day dot, as y'all say. 2020 vision, you see clearly. And I saw that throughout the church. And there's a few churches, it wasn't all of them, but most of them all closed.
Yeah.
Most of them
COVID.
all had masking policies on the kids. Even the church I grew up in, after they stopped all the other policies, the kids still had to wear masks. It was obscene to me to hear that. And my mom still goes to that church. She never wore a mask. My daughter never did. And I was just, I'm just blown away. I'm like, we need more biblical men like you that actually have a spine, that have a strong frame, a framework that they think from and operate from. And I don't think it's an accident that part of that was shaped through your fighting skills and all that, because you're dealing with reality. You know, if you give yourself too many excuses, you're going to get hit in the face and get knocked out. You're dealing with real fists, real consequences.
It's interesting. I had so my coach who coached me through my whole fight career, he was actually from Boston originally. He, he came over, he won the US title and Muay Thai title when he was, and then he came over to Australia, and then he got married over here, and then he's back in the US now, but he lived over here for over 20 years. And he wasn't like a full biblical guy, but in principle he was. And he used to teach me so many really deep truths that, because I knew my Bible, I could reconcile it straight away. He would say, he'd be like, Nico, don't focus on the things you've got no control over. Focus on the things you do have control over, because that's going to give you confidence. When you focus on the things you don't have control over, that brings doubt and fear in, and doubt and fear goes to war with your faith and your confidence. So and then we would go, well, what is the thing what are the things I should focus on then? And it'd be like, just focus on doing your best, because that's the only thing you really have control over, is that I can always do my best. Now, my best is going to be different depending on the day. I might be sick. I might be carrying an injury. Something might happen. I might be dehydrated, whatever. But I can still do my best, and I can choose not to quit or give up. So these are principles that really that shape the way I look at everything, because so I look at everything biblically, with my worldview, but from a position of we're in a war against good and evil, and I actually see it in everything. In absolutely everything, I see it that way. And it's not by chance that the Christian churches have been so corrupted. I don't know if you've heard of the Open Doors ministry, but they're a ministry that do every year they have like a persecution rating on the Christian world. And even at this particular time, there's 52 countries where the Bible is either illegal or heavily restricted, in 52 countries.
No way.
No other religion has this kind of persecution at all. And there's a reason for that, because what's in that book is so powerful and strong. So in the Western countries, which are also being attacked, you've got to understand that what's in that book, if you just look at the countries in the world that have prospered, they were the ones that were built on those principles, right? They were the ones that prospered the most. They had the most freedom, the most of everything. That's the reason why. I know people might disagree. Cool, that's fine. You can. I don't believe it's anything other than those principles. That's where we end up with, the freedom to do certain things. I mean, the difference between, say, like Islam or a lot of these other religions, or Marxism or something, to Christianity. Christianity teaches that you're made in God's image. That makes everybody, and it's not the man, it's the man and the woman. Both made, it actually says they were made in God's image. Male and female made he them, right? We're made in God's image. So there's something divine about us. We're told that the Spirit of God dwells within us. That's very powerful. We're told that we were made to be a temple of the Holy Spirit. We're told that the kingdom of God is within us. We're told that greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world. We're told that it's the light of God is what lights every man that comes into the world. So when you understand these principles and you build your society from that viewpoint, that perspective, with that lens, all of a sudden people are important. We can't enslave people. Yeah. We can't treat people, terribly and horribly and treat them and put them in destitution, because then that would be blasphemous. Because that's literally someone who's made in God's image. How can we treat something that's connected to God, that has a spark of the divine, in such a demoralized way? Well, we can't. So the
Right.
attack, I believe, which is coming from above, and I say above because it's the upside down world. So it's really below, but because it's an upside down world, it's above.
Sure.
These people don't want any shred of those ideas to be invoked in the psyche of the people through media and movies. I remember as a child, there were still TV shows where families were together, they'd pray together, they cared for each other.
Oh.
Now we see written into script, we'll see that the Christian or even just the white family is the one that's the dysfunctional one, but the gay family's the one that's got a better foundation. It's like, well, why is that being written into the script? And it's across the board. Why is the man always made out now in a lot of these movies, especially the children's ones, to be like an idiot, but the wife is the really smart one and she's got it all together? I go, well, why is that? And then we obviously see the rise of feminism, which is completely unbiblical, where the woman has to compete with the man, and there's no reason for that, because we are completely different, and we are completely different in how we operate. There's a dichotomy.
Absolutely.
It's like we're made as half parts, right? Where I always think of it like that way. I wasn't made as a whole or a complete unit. I was made as a half unit, and I need to come together with the other half to make the whole.
Yeah.
But see, that's all being. These ideas are being eroded away through this new culture that's being brought in. There's a mate of mine, Damien. He was in a number of TV shows, and he was an actor, and he was talking about at an event that I was speaking at, and he was talking about how he was in this show called Nowhere Boys, and there was the three families of different ethnicities, and he was the white one, and of course in the script, he's the white Western family has to be the one that's the most corrupted and the most dysfunctional. And that's written into the script on purpose. He knows it's written into the script on purpose. And then he said, and the script was written by an Asian gay man who's the one that's writing the script. So you can see that there's this culture is being radically pushed in a completely different direction, as though the society we had before had to be changed because it was so bad. But if you look at the objective and observable, effects of this new culture, you can see that it's destructive. You can see that there's less fathers in the home. There's about 30 to 40% of homes don't have a father, and out of that percentage of the population, we end up with 87% of the people that are in prison come from that percentage. Yeah, right. So that's across the board in the US statistics, Canadian statistics, UK statistics, and Australian statistics. I've got a list of all the statistics, and they're almost the same and on par. That a small percentage of the population that doesn't have dads in the home, when it's growing, is responsible for nearly all of the prison population, right? So this is being done on purpose, but then we can't. But it's racist, or it's homophobic, or it's bigotry, or it's whatever it is. The name calling comes out if you point out these issues within our society. But we just need to have the backbone to say no. That we're going a long way from what's moral and decent, and we can see it. And I think that's why there's such a radical push back the other way. And it's a very positive one, where people are starting to embrace our traditional values and realizing that actually we do a lot better when we stick to those traditional values, and our families do thrive, and our children do become more creative, and they're more resilient, and they have all of those things that they actually need to be able to engage in their life and not have to rely on the state institutions for everything that they have and need. Yeah,
definitely agree. And that's where, I don't know if we can slip in going into a bit of the anti-child trafficking thing, because there was, I was hanging out with the Bears. Owen Benjamin, the Unbearables, was in that group, and have a lot of friends in there, and have, spoke at the festival a couple of times that they do in Missouri. But during all the Pizzagate stuff, and then the, when everyone's talking about Hillary Clinton and the sewers with all the kids and all that stuff, there was a strong push for, and all these people are like, we just got to go get them, just, string them up and all this stuff. And I've definitely been there emotionally. And Owen was talking about that, and he brought up a good point where he's like, you're like, don't overly, don't fantasize about, what you're going to do to these people, like cutting them up, whatever. You're just going to engage with the monster. You're going to become part of the monster.
Mm.
But you still need to have a strong stance against this. You still need to be able to see what really is there and what's an apparition projected. Because I think there was a pretty good amount of apparition projected, and there was a Q narrative, and they're like, oh, there's millions and millions of them, and they're being saved right now, and like all of that was like fantasy. I think that was actually Chat GPT, by the way. Q.
There's no evidence for any of that. You're right. Yeah.
But being able to actually go and do or look and see what was there. What did you guys actually go and see? Like, what was kind of the purpose of your mission down there, and what went on?
Yeah, and just because Dave did touch on this when we spoke to him, Dave Armstrong, this was pre-COVID, right? This was before 2020. Yeah.
I think it was 2016, maybe 2017. It's around
that. So how did that come on your radar, and how did you guys end up over there?
We were following some stuff online about trafficking. My uncle was... he was an abuse victim, and it was a shocking situation that he went through, and he was involved in a group over here that were going after a lot of the pedophiles from specifically the institutional child abuse, which is massive in Australia. I think it is in most Western countries, probably all around the world. So I was aware of that. I wasn't aware of all of the deeper layers and how far it went, but we were becoming aware of it pretty quickly. And then Dave was following this group in the US with a guy named, what was his name? Craig Sawyer, who was doing some video. He was doing these videos and this stuff online about child trafficking, and he was saying, "Yep, it's all happening here. We've got all the evidence." And then we had booked this is the divine providence, right? So again, I was I ran a boxing class, I think on the Wednesday, or no, it was on the Tuesday with Dave, and Dave was because he'd be boxing with me, and we talked about it. I said, well, let's. I'm not fighting anymore. I just retired from fighting. I said, let me reach out to my sponsors, and we'll see if they can sponsor us to get over there and to help this group that's called the Veterans on Patrol, and we'll give them some support. That way we can at least get in on the fight and start doing something. You just want to do something. We don't know what to do, but let's get involved. And literally the next day in the morning, my wife, because I'd spoken to my wife about it, and that night, in the morning, my wife says there's like $13,000 in our bank account, and I don't know where it's from. And I said, well, so what do you want to do? It was in her bank account. She said, I think you guys need to go.
Wow.
Oh, go over to the US. And she's like, yeah. Okay. So we booked it. I found out later on that a friend of mine who was meant to do a tax thing for me, I'd given up on it. I gave him all my tax stuff, and he just never did it. And I went, oh, whatever. And then he put it into my old accountant, and then they did a depreciation on the business. And I didn't even ask for any of this to happen. And because they did that, there was all this money came back.
Amazing.
But the next morning, though,
this
is all happening without me even knowing. This guy had my paperwork for like a year. So I was, and then the money comes in the next day. So see, that's timing. So I know that we're meant to go.
Yeah.
Anyway, we book our flights, and then this Craig Sawyer guy does a backflip, and he says, "No, there's nothing here, nothing to see." So then we start doing a bit of research on him. We find out that he used to be a bodyguard for the Clintons.
No way.
And so so we contacted the actual guy, Lewis Arthur Mayer, and he's still, I have regular contact with him even now. And we asked him what was going on. He said, because we booked our tickets to come and help. And he said, you're going to see it's all happening. Just come over and you'll see. Anyway, so we did go over, and as soon as we got there, we were shown all of the trafficking routes. There's a whole operation going on through that border. It's incredible. Yeah. When you go there and you see it, there's literally backpacks that are decomposing at different like in all these places in the middle of nowhere, like thousands of them. You can see them. You can see this, and you look at these backpacks, and there's no, like a backpack would have a tag in it, made here or a brand, nothing. There's nothing. So
Wow.
because there can't be, right? And there's all these black bottles that are there for water, and the reason that they're black is that the way you can't see them, like they you can't really notice them. They don't reflect anything.
Yeah.
So we were seeing all of this. It's interesting because the actual the group Veterans on Patrol, they found a underground bunker that was only big enough for children to be held in. It had toys in it, and it was lockable from the outside only. And they found a decomposing child's skull.
Jesus.
There.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And it was
Wow.
on the property of a company called CMEX. I don't know about the skull, I don't think it was, but that underground bunker was. And CMEX is one of the biggest funders to the Clinton Foundation, right? And it was after that came out that Craig Sawyer, who used to work for the Clintons, comes out saying there's nothing to see here, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So you start to work it out. Yeah,
it makes you wonder, though, why was he even like trying to get people to come and take a look at it? Because that was the thing with the whole Pizzagate thing. They the media centered the whole thing around the pizza shop, which I've seen in DC, Ping Pong or whatever. Definitely a freaking pedo hangout. Like it's, I didn't go in there, but
there was three. There was Planet Ping Pong. There was like three different pizza shops that were all in a small area.
Like all of that's real. And they made that look like, there's nothing going on here. It's just this one, people are saying that Hillary Clinton owns this pizza shop and she doesn't even own it. It's like, that's all straw man arguments. No one was claiming that.
Just those emails that came out, $65,000 of, if we're going to order $65,000 of pizza from another state, because you don't order pizzas from a different state. Yeah. You don't bring pizzas into the hot dogs and pizza. You don't bring them in to the White House anyway, because you're not allowed to. No. And then they're you don't spend $65,000 on those things either. Yeah. And when you know that represents boys and girls, you just think, wow, these people are wrong. Yeah. Like they are.
Yeah.
Wrong.
And it's things like that where I'm like, you're not going to vote that situation right. Like, doesn't matter who you vote for. Like that's in a different class of things. That's in a spiritual warfare type situation, but also a very physical, very tangible thing. But, I like to point out there's been a few evidence, based studies where people have shown like the kids that get abducted, the kids that get trafficked, the father isn't there. Or if he is, he's either part of it or he's just, really corrupt, really messed up.
Well,
but a strong, good father will protect the kids from traffickers. They won't even go near that family if there's a strong father there.
You need to be a scary man. You need to, that people around you need to know. Like with me, I know people of all walks of life. If I needed anything, I can get it because I know the people in all the different worlds, and they need to know that guy will come after me, and he will cut my hands off if I hurt these children. Like they need to know that you are capable of doing things that are violent.
Yeah.
But that's where we it says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. Meekness is the idea of the man who's got the sword, but it's sheathed and he's in the garden, right? Better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, right? Yeah. And that's what we should be. And I think all men need to be this. And I mean, my children, they all do jiu-jitsu and they all do boxing and they all train regularly. And I want them to be strong. They all understand their biblical principles and they have a biblical foundation. They all know that they all defend justice and they stand up for the truth no matter what, and that they should have power, but they have to use that power righteously. The Bible verse I've been sharing with my children lately has been where Jesus says, "He who exalts himself or puffs himself up will be abased, but he who humbles himself will be exalted." So if you maintain humility, with that power. So you've got all this power that you've built up and you've learned, whether it's intellectual power, knowledge is power. You've got you're well connected with people. That's power, people power. You've got your ability to fight, your ability to speak, whatever it is that you've got, that's power. But you use it the right way, and you don't, become inflated in your ego. If you do the right thing with that power, he's going to exalt you and open the doorway for you to become great. So remember that. So I'm planting that seed in their minds now. But I think, like you said, the men need to be around because they're the defenders. Yeah. And actually, this is an interesting story. I was talking to a woman. We ran a homeschool camp the other day. It was like 90 of us that my wife and a few other people organised this camp with all these homeschool kids. We were away for 5 days. And I was talking to one of the mothers, and she said, "Oh, well done, Nick. It was great that you stood up for all of us and ran those rallies, and all of you went through going to jail and having your shoulder broken. Well done. Thank you so much." She said, "I wanted to stand up and defend my rights as well, but I just didn't have it in me. It's not my nature. I'm more of an empathetic person." And I said, "That's okay, because I like to fight. I'm happy to do that. I really embrace it. If something's wrong and needs to be dealt with, I'm happy to get involved and do it." And I said to her, we had this chat, and I said, think of this analogy, right? We'll use this as an example. If some old lady got attacked by somebody on the street, punched in the face, she's on the ground, she's hurting, and this drug addict guy takes her purse and starts running, and you see that, what's the first thing you're going to do? She goes, "I'm going to go to the woman and help her." I said, "That's interesting." And that's not the wrong answer. But I wouldn't do that. I would go straight after the guy that's running, because I know I can deal with him. And I already, straight away, I've thought about it. I got to stop him doing that to anyone else. And I can deal with him right now. I can't do much for her. But I can do a lot to stop him. I said, neither is wrong. They're both right. Because you're in a controversy where you don't have all power to deal with both situations. You can only really deal with one or the other. Yeah. But we're made with we have different elements in us. We have different characteristics. We have different gifts, different power. We should be who we were created to be. We're not all the same. Once we understand that, and that's part of the journey, I think, of going inside, looking within yourself. You look within yourself and you say, well, what am I? Am I empathy more? Am I justice more? Am I courage more? Am I love more? Am I alms giving? When you realize what you are, because you've done a deep dive within, then you start going, well, I know what I am now. Now I'm going to go and do that. And as you do that, then you start to develop some of these other things and develop them more. And it's important that we understand that as well. But can I just say one thing about that child? Because we're talking about the child trafficking and the evil things that happen with like we talked about the $65,000 worth of hot dogs and pizza going to the White House, right? We know what that means. I spoke at an event a while ago. It was a couple of years ago, actually, about this subject. And I mentioned some of the scandals that had happened over here. And I asked the crowd, I said, why do you think this happens? Like, do you think these people all just like messing around with children? And a lot of them are like, yeah. I said, I don't think they all like messing around with children. But I have a biblical view. So Satan's the god of this world. Now imagine the god of this world is evil, and you want to be somewhere in something high up in this world. Let's say you get to that point where now you're starting to talk to people who are connected directly to that guy. What's the one variable inside of you that might affect your ability to function and work for the bad guy? It's your conscience. So how do we deal with that? So I think of it like this. Satan's probably there going, hey, Alexa and Isaac, look, we like you. We've been watching you. People have, they've got a good rapport with you, some of my other guys, and we've got a good spot for you here. We've got an ambassador position for you, and we're happy to give you the job. You're going to love the job. There's one problem. We operate in darkness, and there's some light inside of you. You were born with it, and we need to deal with that light. But don't worry. we've got a ritual that we can do where we're gonna do some things with some children, and you might not like it, but that's the only way we can trust that your conscience no longer is going to be in the way of us doing business together. And I just believe that's all it is. It's a way to destroy your conscience, because what is more destructive to the conscience than the abuse and the hurting of children who are purely innocent? I don't think anything is.
Yeah. And we've had...
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had Rachel Vaughan on, and she obviously speaks very publicly about this stuff because she's experienced it herself as a child. And it's there's a reason that they do the rituals with the children, because they are the purest and most innocent thing. And actually, as you were speaking, I kind of just had this epiphany that I've never actually thought of this aspect before, but it's almost like this where you actually fully abandon your inner child in doing something like that. And it takes the light out of you, because I'm getting cold shivers just talking about it now, because just to even think of that stuff, like, because obviously we do have that light in us, and we want it to shine, and we let it shine. Even the thought of things like this happening is so disturbing and so disgusting. But unfortunately you've hit the nail on the head. It's so that I think you do go to this point of no return, and that's what these people do.
Yeah. And there's a connection to the Amalekites in all this with the Bible. Cause I know a lot of the Bible stuff, read it several times, and these groups, some of these satanic groups that do this stuff, they themselves have a tradition that they are descendant from the Amalekites. And I've heard people that are like, oh, if God was really God, if he was really loving, why would he kill all these innocent people in the Bible? And I'm like, you mean the Amalekites? They were whoever, I can't remember what king was ordered to kill them all. They were supposed to kill everything. They were where they reckon the vampires come from. Yeah, that's where the history of like vampires is meant to be. 100%.
Interesting.
Because it passes that on. And I won't go into detail, but I've been dealing or have worked with an energetic closure to traumas like that in my family, in my lineage on both my parents' side, because that energy is transferred generation to generation, and slowly it's been working its way out. You know, none of my brothers and I were traumatized in that way that I know of, but we still carry that energy. So it's important to weed that out, to pull it out by the roots. And that energetic root is that trapped emotion and the trapped trauma that gets in the DNA and is passed on. That's the sins of the father.
Which opens up the doorway to the familiar, what they call the familiar spirit or the family spirit that's been attached for the generations.
Yeah, Dottie talks about that a lot.
Yeah. And for people interested in that, like if there is any history of your abuse or in the family, that can be dealt with. I went the route of going to my friend Steve that does emotion code. And it's really profound work. You can go back and look at the episode where we talk about his work with emotion code. But this stuff is so important to pull it out by the root, and it goes beyond just, you know, putting a rope around someone's neck and taking it. But that's a good start. You know, they say the tree of liberty every now and then needs to be watered with the bloods of kings, you know, and what was it? The guy that started Black Rifle Coffee, I'll never forget that because he's freaking hilarious. He was a former Special Forces guy, and he's like, you know, that tree's looking a little bit thirstier every year. And I'm like, I don't want to go that route as far as like just open bloodshed and all that stuff. But there's a part of me that without hesitation will when it's necessary. And the power establishment needs to know that we don't look for the threat. We're here as sheepdogs. That's why I love the firearm culture in America, because at 7 years old, I'm learning that I'm responsible for where I point this thing. I'm responsible. I'm very lethal with it, but I'm also very controlled. And the purity in my spirit, my heart is like, I will never point this at someone who's not trying to kill me or kill someone else. Mm-hmm. And that culture, that you need to find that edge as a man. And some women too, if you feel drawn to learning weaponry, learning self-defense and all that, like, you know, all hands on deck at this point, just to become a strong spirit that's incapable of being squashed like they tried during COVID. I don't know what the future holds, but I would be willing to guess that that isn't going away, that they'll come back again and try some other way to, stomp out the freedom spirit from people. So keeping it alive is just staying connected to God primarily, because your foundation is exactly what you're talking about. Super important. And then from there, operate with honor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's it. And that's where, it helps to have an understanding that there is a God who defends you. Like my faith is that I'll do what I have the confidence and faith to do what I know is right to the nth degree, because I know that God will take care of me. I don't care, even if it's bad and it's tough and it hurts, whatever the recompense is for from the establishment. If I stand up for my rights and freedom, I know that He's watching. So it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter what anyone says to try to convince me that He's not watching and He's not real, because I've had my personal experience that He's real and so real that you can't convince me. I know God.
Yeah.
So that's my real power, is that I know God, and I know that these principles that are true as far as, what's right, correct, and just, that I have an obligation to defend those and to defend them, whether it's my own family or somebody else. So I will. And I know that I have someone that does have all power, because I don't have all power. I have the power that I have. But there is a corruption in relying on your own power. I think when you rely on the power above, and you realize the power I have comes from above, it's like that famous quote from Braveheart, one of my favorite movies. Such a great movie, right? For that freedom.
Yeah, I love that movie.
But it says God makes men who they are, right? That's the thing, right? So if I have the confidence to do a certain thing that's right, even though that there's these objective things in front of me that are threatening me, coercing me, trying to promote fear, if I just go, yeah, okay, I can see you, but I don't care, because I know someone greater than you is defending me. When you have that, then you at your disposal, that's where you're really in a safe place. And I think that's where you get your real power does come from above. Because whether it be power that goes directly through you, whether it's David and Goliath power, or whether it's literally a whole lot of other people just out of nowhere turn up to help you, whatever it is, God's going to make it all work. And I always think of that really good Bible verse from some of my favorites. It's from Romans 8, verse 28. He says, all things turn out for good to those who are the called according to His purpose. So it doesn't matter how it looks on the outside. It will ultimately turn out for good, as long as you maintain your integrity and you hold to those firm, solid spiritual principles, because spiritual things are principles, and you hold to them all the way through. And that's your intention. If you do that and you're confident and you have faith in that, it'll all work out for the good. And you will actually, that's how you save your own soul. It's through those principles. You can't do anything of your own self. But you do have these principles that are written onto your heart. And if you follow those principles, that's how you invoke the Spirit of God to come into the temple, which is what we are. We're the temple of the Holy Spirit. And once we start to realize that, then we start to walk in our real power. And that's the beautiful thing. And I'm so happy that we've had the whole COVID situation and all these false narratives, and they're so obvious now, because so many people are turning back to the truth, and they're realizing there is a spiritual war going on, and they're making the decision, because it's the one thing that we're truly sovereign over, is our ability to make choices. They're making the decision which side they're on. And there's a lot of people making the decision to be on the right side. So I think the army of righteousness is getting formed right now as we speak. And if you're not sure which side of the fence you're on, I'm going to encourage you to jump on. I'm not talking about you guys, but anyone watching. I want you guys to make the choice to jump on the side of truth and justice and righteousness, because that's the one that will win in the end.
It will win.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I want to, just point out how cool it is for people. Like, don't despair. I know in some circles, people start getting in that headspace and that loop, talking about, what they did and what they're planning. And they've got all the money and they've got all the power and they've got the courts and they've got the police. What you guys saw, what you witnessed was desperation when they went at you like that. Yeah. And you said at the beginning was something I want to highlight about how the narrative was breaking down. They lost like half their police force. And when I was doing special forces selection, and the log PT, where they pick the big logs and you do all this torturous stuff with it, carrying this heavy log. And there was a test where they would pair you up, with another team on the logs, and you just, after you're already beaten down, exhausted, puking, like all that, you're holding the log over your head, everyone, like there's 12 guys, it takes 12 guys to pick up one log, and then whoever drops it first gets punished. And that was the whole, it pays to be a winner. And this will relate to the police situation where we're holding the log on my team and just staring down the other team holding it. And I see one guy's arm dip like that. And I just immediately called it out and was like, they're losing it. They're losing it. They're about to drop it. And that thought projected into them, and they dropped it within seconds of me calling that and speaking it into public. And the more we see these truths and speak it, like, oh, they're losing half their force. They're losing the power to administer these laws or to enforce them. The corrupt one, the corrupt laws, and we're not for a lawless society, but we are winning if we keep that mindset and we speak it into existence, but it actually is happening. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I always talk about this now when we go to different events and we talk about freedom. I always say, we talk about power, people, you mentioned it. People say, oh, they've got all the power, they've got all the money. Yeah, but they don't have the truth. You know how powerful that is? Yeah. You can destroy a narrative with the truth. When you get your voice out there and you promote the truth and you expose the lies, what happens? The narrative breaks. They lose all their power because all these people go, yeah, that's they become convicted in their conscience against it. And that's why we see this restriction on speech on social media and all of this infrastructure invested in silencing people. It's because the power of your voice is greater than the power of all their money and wealth and their strongholds, because we have the truth. The truth just cuts it to the core. If people just understood that, like we've all got a measure of influence in our communities. Like some of us have a small community that they can reach. Some have a larger community. Some have social media platforms and large platforms, and they can reach a lot of people. It doesn't matter. You have power to influence the minds of those people. And if you become good at articulating the truth and inspiring the truth to others, you'll get converts to the truth, and they will break away from the lie. And then we get more people on our side. That's what they don't want to happen. That's why, like in Australia, we've had a number of recent attempts to take away speech with different legislation. We've had federal legislation where they tried to bring in an act called the misinformation disinformation bill. So they'd have a government body that would decide what's true and what's false. And they would have power over social media platforms as well as to what they share and what they don't share. We already have the social media issues where social media can be influenced by government. And if you're speaking, like with COVID, if you spoke against the COVID narrative, they would just kick you off social media, which is what happened to me. I was kicked off Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo very quickly. I think Telegram was the only one that I didn't get kicked off.
That's 4 badges of honor you've got there, Nick.
Yeah, well, how's this? So when I got kicked off Instagram and Facebook, I ran a rally to the police headquarters during COVID. We took about 10,000 people there, and we informed the police that they were acting under dictation. We had the case law there, and part of their Victoria Police Act that defines that they're meant to be independent office holders and they can't be directed by the government. And here it is. And because I shared that and a video of that on my platforms, the next day, Instagram and Facebook gave me a permanent ban with no right to appeal.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've been permanently disabled. You cannot appeal this decision. So that shows you that speech is very powerful, because I don't want people to know this. This is truth. That's affecting the narrative. We need to shut this person down.
Yeah.
And if you look at it properly, you go, oh, we've got a lot of power. Look at how much their infrastructure they've got. They would have had to have paid probably those platforms a lot of money to restrict that speech the way they did.
Yeah.
So, and these platforms, I think we're also seeing the, it's talked about in the conspiracy circles. There is proof and evidence that these platforms were funded with seed money from a CIA company that they don't even hide. So there's a government involvement with all this from the very get-go. And what we're seeing is just why. That's why, so that they can just seamlessly integrate when they need to control the narrative for whatever ideology that they're trying to cultivate, for whatever purposes that they've dreamed up in their disgusting basements.
Yeah, well, that's what I wanted to say too, just before we wrap up, is that, you know, all this talk of they've got the power and the power. It's like they have the power to control other people, because once
I would say influence, but continue.
Well, yeah, that's right. It is actually influence, but the control structures that have been formed in this world are because they don't have any power. They've lost their light. Like that the power that we have comes from God. That's how I see it. And so when they are living in darkness and they only have darkness within them, they can't create anything. They can't actually do anything of real power, and they have to use the people as pawns to enact their will. So
parasites.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's something to
So
point out too.
We won't let the parasites win. They're not going to win.
No.
Exactly.
We've got the truth. We've got the Spirit of God. We were made in God's image. They've got the light taken. They've given up their light. And look, we hope that some of these people that still have, that might be redeemable, can come back to the truth, and they can turn the corner. But a lot of them are not going to. That's fine. That's up to them. It's their decision, and I'm not going to get in the way. I'm just going to speak the truth. But the truth is, we should never let go of the ability to speak to people one-on-one.
Yeah.
One-on-one conversations. How many one-on-one conversations could you have, or conversations with groups could you have in a day, in a week, in a month? That alone, if we got completely kicked off social media, if we're still able to have communities, if we don't let go of that and insulate ourselves into this social media world of just in our little house, and we just communicate on social media, if we maintain our communities, we then maintain our ability to influence people directly. And I don't see how governments could really stop us from being able to invoke true principles and inspire people that way. So we would still maintain that enough. I think there's enough power there in just speaking to people directly. If we were to do that and maximize that, I still think we could win. I don't think they have the power. They convinced us that they have the power. That's a lie, because remember, they're liars. Everything they do is a lie, and their God is the father of lies. We're the other side, so we just have to have belief that no, our God's greater, and the truth is sovereign, and the truth will always prevail.
And the truth shall set you free.
100%. Yeah.
Well, it's like the Living Free Festival. This is where we take the internet into the real life, and we can talk about that a little bit. What are you looking forward to? What did you learn? What was your experience from the last festival, and what do you hope to have for this next one?
It was probably the most fun I've had since I've had a family. Being able to have the family there. There was about 100 kids there last time, and they're all just playing, having fun. There's no people no one's on devices, because there's no internet there. There's nothing. Like literally no signal. I think someone said there was one spot where you could get like a bar. And I'm like,
and then everyone went there, and then you couldn't get it because too many people were trying to use the one spot.
And it was just great, because it's like, I remember before the mobile phone era, where we all just spoke to people and had fun. It was different. We have been socially engineered quite a lot, but it's very quickly we go back to what's organic, and we communicate with each other. And when you're around people, this is what the word church means. It's the word ecclesia, and it's the word kahal. It means in the Hebrew, it's kahal. It means assembly, an assembly of people. The word church that we read in the Bible, it's translated into English as church, never meant a religious institution. It always meant a community of people. That's what it literally means. We're in a community of people that are aligned on most things, not on everything, but on most things. And we're of the same ilk to some degree. There's something very beautiful about that. And it's so much fun. And I'm really looking forward to it. I had so much fun last time. And I think this time I'm going to be doing a little bit less work. So it's going to be even better.
Yeah, I can't wait. And it's just a whole different resonance. It's so, and every, like, Confluence was just on in the States, and, you know, they do Music and Sky over in LA, and everyone that goes to these types of events just says, like, the feeling that's there, like this resonance that's created is Well, and it's interesting. The resonance of truth, they say, is an even higher frequency than love. So when you're in that resonance, it's an incredible feeling. And there's things, I mean, that's what actually birthed us launching this podcast together, was after the festival. We left there and we're like, we need to do this. Like, we need to actually, we just need to start. We need to do it. And we did. And yeah, it's such a beautiful event. I'm so looking forward to this year. I think it's just going to be, even bigger and even better. Yeah.
Anyone that comes, if you're thinking about coming, you're not sure, please turn up. I guarantee you, I promise you, you will have so much fun. It is amazing. Yeah. And so I don't know how to explain it unless you're there. When you're there, you will realize, this was awesome. And it's something we need. And we need to be in communities and in a way where we're having fun and people are together just having fun. And so it's a beautiful thing that he's put together, Dave and Aaron, with this Living Free Festival. I'm happy to be involved in some part, but I mean, it's a lot of work he's put into it. But it's a beautiful event, and it will inspire you. Just turn up, just get there.
Well, it reminded me of the Bear Fest thing, because it's they don't serve alcohol, and there's a policy on it, but if people bring their own and sip it back at the tent, no one's going to hunt you down. But it's like, in general, the culture is it's family friendly, and it really is a different experience. If people are used to going to festivals and being inebriated and having fun that way, to me, it's more I feel like, because we had our market stall. It was nonstop, talking to people all day long.
I was sick. I got sick the day we arrived.
But you just have so much energy in spite of everything. And then you leave and you feel like you've been there for like weeks.
Yeah. Well, I was unwell. I had no voice by the end of it, and I still had the best time. Like, it was just awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a different experience.
Well, we're going to have the link for that in the show notes. So for anyone that does want to come, you can, get tickets now. It's on late August. And for anyone else that wants to get in touch with you, Nick, like, obviously you're not on social media, but do you have anywhere where people can get involved with you and what you're doing?
Oh, look, I do have, I have got back onto social media. I had to use a different browser and under a different alias, but I'm just, I'm just Nick Patto on Instagram and Facebook. I think I'm Samuel Nick. I don't know. I might have changed.
Don't worry. We'll put the links in the show notes.
Links.
All right. I'll share all that with you and put that on the.
Awesome.
That's good.
And you're on the Living Free Movement platform as well. So we always encourage people to join that. We're big advocates for the LFM, and you're on there too. So people can always, watch what you've got on there as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much for your time and for giving me a bit more of a voice. I really appreciate it and love what you're doing.
Oh, thank you, Nick.
That was a great chat.
Yeah. And, I feel like I want to get you on just to do like a whole thing on like Bible study. I actually I've often said to Isaac, I just love the way that you speak about it, because it doesn't come from this super dogmatic religious place, and you just speak about it so beautifully. And I think you do. You have a really beautiful message to send with that.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that. If you want to do that, just let me know.
For sure.
Beautiful.
Thanks, Nick. We'll see you at the festival.
I'll see you then. Thanks so much, guys. God bless and stay strong.
Beautiful. Thanks for tuning in to the Natural AF podcast, where we explore holistic healing modalities, mindsets, and methods that reconnect us to nature and our natural state of being.
If something resonated, share this episode and see the show notes for our guest links, as well as all of our discount codes for our aligned affiliates and Natural Art Form, where we handcraft a range of organic, natural remedies to help support your body's natural healing abilities and help support the show.
If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take a few seconds to leave us a rating and review. And if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, hit the like button and drop us a comment, and be sure to subscribe to our channel for the latest updates.
We're not here to conform. We're here to remember what's real. So step into your power, be curious, and be natural AF.